So in Punjab, we can see in the blood of Punjabi farmers, nitrogen content was very high, and that is causing cancer. Actually, government is not clearly giving us the real picture because one, we are completely dependent on imports of fertilizers. So these chemical fertilizers, not only the fertilizers, but whatever domestic fertilizer production we have, even that is dependent on the imported raw materials. By March 10th, the supply, the reserves which we had of natural gas has depleted by 30%.
What does a war between the US, Israel, and Iran have to do with what a farmer in Punjab or Madhya Pradesh decides to plant and ultimately what we eat? Everything. Because that war decides if a bag of fertilizer even reaches the farmer. And without it, the farmer has to rethink what to grow or how much land to cultivate. Welcome to Beyond the Plate, a podcast series by Down to Earth. Through in-depth conversations on agriculture and the politics shaping what we eat, Beyond the Plate will pull back the curtain on the global food systems at a time when climate change and geopolitical shifts are redrawing how food is grown, distributed, and consumed. Each episode will unpack the realities of our food systems, from farming, soil, and livestock to policy decisions and forces that shape what eventually ends up on our plates. So, why are we discussing fertilizers today? Because in today's agricultural systems, fertilizers are quite literally food for crops. They determine how much can be grown, how reliably, and ultimately how much food reaches our plates and at what costs. So, this affects all of us. I am Shagun, Principal Correspondent at Down to Earth, and to help unpack this, I have with me today Dr. Narasimha Reddy Donthi. Dr. Donthi is a public policy expert and advisor at the Pesticide Action Network India and a visiting faculty at Delhi-based Impact and Policy Research Institute. Welcome to Beyond the Plate.
Thank you.
So, just for setting the context first, currently there's so much debate and concern around fertilizer availability and prices in the aftermath of the war in West Asia and the impact in Middle East as well. Around 60% of our natural gas supply, which is the primary feedstock for our urea fertilizer, is imported from the West Asian region. And for now, the government has said that there's sufficient comfortable stocks for the upcoming Kharif season, even though it has enacted the Essential Commodities Act and it has capped the supply of natural gas to fertilizer plants at 70%. Yesterday, Iran agreed to open the Strait of Hormuz, but there's still uncertainty because it has said it can close it again if the US blockade continues. So this is the whole context of what we're going to discuss today. But this is not just about this one war or conflict. We had the similar situation in during the Russia-Ukraine war. Then last year, when China restricted its exports of DAP fertilizer and other fertilizers, we faced a similar situation. So can you walk us through why there has been such a scramble? Can you explain the scale of our fertilizer dependence? How much chemical fertilizers do we need? How much do we produce domestically and how much do we import?
Actually, government is not clearly giving us the real picture because one, we are completely dependent on imports of fertilizers. So these chemical fertilizers, not only the fertilizers, but whatever domestic fertilizer production we have, even that is dependent on the imported raw materials. So these two factors clearly have put us in a binding situation. And current war, West Asia war, has clearly created a crisis which mimics, and it is much more, a number of times more than what we faced in 1970s. You know, in 1970s, we had a crisis of crude petroleum resources, but now this is much more because after 35 years, we are facing we have become dependent. So, for one, India uses in agriculture lot of diammonium phosphate and urea and NPK fertilizers. So, these are three majorly used. And diammonium phosphate, we are dependent on China, Saudi Arabia, and Morocco.
Completely, I
Com-
think, if I'm correct.
Almost completely. There is no domestic production. In urea, government says 87% of Indian consumption comes from domestic production. Fine, but this 87% is dependent on raw materials, especially LNG feedstock, natural gas. And that natural gas, we are dependent on Qatar for 60%.
Okay.
So, 60% of our LNG comes from Qatar. And Qatar has stopped LNG, the natural gas supplies on March 2nd.
After the attack on it.
The war began on February 28th, and within 3 days, Qatar has announced that they are stopping all LNG supplies to everyone.
Okay.
So, on March 9th, Government of India issued this natural gas order, which gives prioritization to different sectors. So, the top priority goes to domestic LPG supply. Second priority, 70% goes to fertilizer production.
Okay.
But by March 10th, the supply, the reserves which we had of natural gas has depleted by 30%. That's the data which is showing. So, a period of 10 days, we lost 30%. I mean, basically, we don't have a supply. So, 30% reserve consumption has happened. Okay. And supply did not resume after March 10th as well. In fact, I think mid-March, there was an attack by Israel on Iranian natural gas refinery. And Iran in turn, they attacked the neighboring Qatar facility and they damaged it. The statement by the company was, we will not be able to supply for the next 5 years. So, basically, our dependence is very high, almost 100%, either in fertilizers or in the raw materials which are used for the fertilizers. So, this is a serious crisis, and as you mentioned, last year, just because we had some 10-15% of the shortfall, we had almost lathi charge, long queues in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Maharashtra, many states. Due to that 10-15% shortage which the government kept saying. So, here we are seeing at least 50% to 60% shortage because of raw material supply completely stopped and shipping routes have been distorted. Tankers are not coming. So, even if we are going for Russian or Saudi Arabian supplies, and even if China makes it up, still we will be falling, the time lag to recoup that supply is easily 6 months.
Right now, it's a lean period in our agricultural cycle. So, the situation will be more clear during the when Kharif production starts.
Exactly. So, March, April, May, this is now off agriculture season. And this Rabi season already we had a crisis and farmers were looking for fertilizers even in February. So the crisis is there, which is not being acknowledged by the government.
So basically, when we say that India is largely a food self-sufficient country in terms of food production, that's only half true. Uh, because the situation changes when it comes to fertilizer. The self-sufficiency that we have is dependent on the import of fertilizers or raw materials, as you just explained. So I want to take a step back from talking about uh, import dependency to fertilizer dependency. Why is there so much dependency on chemical fertilizers in the first place? Like, why do we need so much of it? What is it about Indian agriculture or even global agriculture that chemical fertilizers are so central to our food production systems?
This is a structural problem because in the last 50 years, 60 years, we have built a agriculture, modern agriculture, which is structured around chemical fertilizers. So, in way back in 1965, government at that time announced that we are promoting green revolution, and the green revolution was based on bringing high yielding hybrid seed varieties. And these hybrid seed varieties eventually require additional nutrients in the form of potassium, nitrogen, or ammonia, phosphates. So that is where the chemical fertilizers have come. So the entire green revolution is a package of hybrid seeds, chemical fertilizers, and eventually chemical pesticides. So initially, Indian farmers did not take this up, these hybrid seed varieties, because they were sure about their traditional methods of agriculture production. So in 70s, government started subsidizing chemical fertilizers. They said, we'll give you subsidies, you can grow more using these. In fact, there was this slogan called grow more, and there was this picture of chemical fertilizer, urea was there. In fact, that's how urea is actually not required in the sense, depending on the soil. But urea became more prominent in Indian agriculture because government pushed it like anything. So in 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, lot of subsidization went into increasing our dependence on chemical fertilizers. So then by 2000, when the structural reforms, economic reforms came, then the government realized we are paying 1,000 lakhs of crores for fertilizers. So government wants to step back. So when Dr. Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister, our chemical fertilizer subsidy was almost 2 lakh crores. So government, number of committees were established on how to, reduce chemical fertilizer. But then the problem is, by then farmers have become dependent on that. They got addicted to fertilizers. And today in 2026, without fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, external inputs, we are unable to grow food at all. So, in many of the irrigated areas, whether in Punjab, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Maharashtra, wherever irrigation is more, fertilizer production consumption has increased. So, now we are using 150 kgs per hectare. I mean, on an average. Some states they use very high, like Punjab uses very.
Average?
Yes, this is the average 147.55 kgs per hectare. So this is a very high level of usage, and it is already showing up on the health of the farmers. Environmental contamination has happened. So in Punjab, we can see in the blood of Punjabi farmers, nitrogen content was very high, and that is causing cancer. And yeah, it's all over India. In fact, in Andhra Pradesh, now farmers are facing kidney failure. So in Vijayawada, you have a lot of kidney hospitals which either do dialysis or they offer kidney replacement surgeries.
The diagnosis is the chemical fertilizer.
Especially nitrogenous fertilizer. Because urea, we use lot of urea. In Miryalaguda in Telangana, below Nagarjuna Sagar Dam, this is almost a 5 lakh acre command area. There, the farmers produce paddy. For last 30 years, they have been producing paddy only and 2 seasons. So they spread fertilizer. Yes, 2 seasons paddy. They use almost 10 bags of urea on each acre. In fact, farmers told us instead of soil, you will see only the fertilizer. So they spread fertilizer like that. So this has become, this dependence is very seriously ingrained into the Indian farmers. We are not discussing the health and other issues, but today the dependence is so high. So any bag, if there is a shortfall, farmers agitation begins. So governments shake. So we have seen that last year and earlier also 5-6 years back. So fertilizer, for fertilizer there are queues. Our farmers keep coming from the villages to the towns. There are lathi charges happening. Some places firing is happening. So this dependence is among the farmers. So on the other hand, government says, Indian government, we want to now reduce, the same government which subsidized it fully without, any conditions. Today, in the last 15-20 years, it is trying to hold back. Exactly. Now it is 1,74,000 crores is the bill for fertilizer. So that's a huge bill on the government exchequer.
So, more than what I understand is more than the fertilizer import dependence problem, this is a problem of fertilizer dependence. And it's fascinating that if we strictly speak in historical terms, as you explained, this is a fairly new dependence. It started in after 1960s, in 1970s and 80s, and in just such a short span, we got dependent on it. You were talking about the overuse, and I remember even from my reporting in Punjab and Haryana specifically, whenever we speak to farmers, they repeatedly mentioned that if we don't put the fertilizers in the amount that we are putting right now, we won't get anything because the soil is dead.
Yes.
So now this is a vicious cycle. You keep on continuing putting in more fertilizers, and that ultimately affects the soil health and also our own health, as you explained. So do you think that finally this crisis, the war, is an opportunity for us to make it about a soil health issue rather than the fertilizer availability issue or the price issue? I mean, if we have programs like Natural Farming Mission and the organic farming programs. So, according to you, if something has to be done right now, what should that solution be?
Exactly. As I mentioned, now government is in a bind because not now, in the last 15-20 years, it wanted to reduce this bill and they wanted to, one is leave it to the market forces. So that means reduce the subsidy. But then they are not able to do it because the pressure from the farmers is very high. So now the opportunity is soil is degraded and farmers understand that. So now government can, because now the farmers have understood the problem as well. Government has several options before to improve the soil health naturally. So, like you mentioned in natural farming, there are hundreds of methods, traditional methods of increasing the soil health. But additionally, what government of India can do is it can, announce a national compost mission. In fact, it is there, but they are not, completely rigorously implementing that. So now we are in a crisis. So we need to use this. So the National Compost Mission, or the lowest hanging fruit before us is we have a lot of urban waste. So all over India, thousands of tons of waste is dumped, and 50% of it is wet waste, compostable waste. So this waste can be composted within a month. So we don't require years to do that. The only thing is we need the sankalp from the government.
I think you also wrote a letter about the same thing to the Prime Minister and the Agriculture Minister.
Yes, exactly. I on March 10th, I sent a letter to both Prime Minister and also Union Agriculture Minister, saying we have four options. One is this converting urban waste into compost after segregation, because without segregation it will be a hazardous waste. So we need that segregation. Second is we always have been at a small level using green manure crops. So some varieties are used by the farmers. Those seeds can be distributed now, so that farmers, when the first rains come, they can sow green manure crops, and once they come up, within 15 days they can be mulched back into the soil. So that immediately increases the nitrogen in the soil. Third is we have nitrogen fixing crops. So mostly pulses. So it could be tur dal, it could be moong dal. There are different 15 to 20 pulse varieties. So government can prepare now so that farmers can go for nitrogen fixing crops and not depend on only paddy and wheat, which require fertilizer.
But Dr. Donthi, I mean, we have heard these discussions so many times that pulses and legumes are nitrogen fixing crops, and but that has not, that we need to incentivize these crops rather than give grains and paddy and wheat, but that has not translated on towards actions on the ground. Why has that not happened?
Because the government funds which are locked in chemical fertilizers have not been transferred. So the 1,74,000 crores, if they transfer at least 10,000 crores, we don't require more. So this is the kind of transfer which can happen now, because without government getting into controversy.
Towards incentivizing these crops
Yeah, yeah,
and giving guaranteed
yes.
MSP as they are
Yes.
giving given on rice and paddy. Sorry,
Exactly.
rice and wheat.
Now there are two, three methods of transferring the subsidy, chemical fertilizer subsidy bill to domestic production of composting. One is where the government can give subsidy for green manure crops and seeds, legumes, or other nitrogen fixing crops. That is directly subsidizing the seeds. But the other part is, it can give MSP, declare MSP for legumes. So the farmers themselves will shift. So it can declare MSP, where the cost of cultivation is reflected in the MSP, and declare it now, so the farmers will get prepared. Third is you do procurement of whatever crops you want to, because there are many crops which can improve the soil health on their own. They don't require external chemical fertilizer inputs.
Yeah.
So this is a best option where we don't depend on Russia or Saudi Arabia or Morocco to get fertilizer and then supply it. This is a completely energy intensive effort. So we have other option which is more sustainable.
Okay.
So this I think the government should attempt now, because farmers understand that war is also preventing government from supplying chemical fertilizer. So the simplest fact is their farmers can understand we need to go to the alternatives.
So, can this be done immediately without any implications? Because whenever we talk about non chemical fertilizer, especially in the last few years, there is the case of Sri Lanka that comes to mind, which overnight went organic and it declared that it will be a non chemical country, and they banned all synthetic fertilizers, and then we saw a huge crisis. The food production dropped, yields dropped, there was hunger. So, what is the right way to do it and not repeat the same? Like, what lessons can be drawn from that?
Actually, that's a good lesson to look at, because Sri Lanka had a foreign exchange problem post COVID scenario, because when Sri Lanka is dependent on exports for revenue and imports for agriculture. So they had a foreign exchange currency. Basically, the capital for fertilizers was not available. But instead of informing the people that we have this problem, Sri Lanka thought they are doing a good thing and saying we are banning chemical fertilizers and going for organic farming.
Okay.
So it was a overnight decision to shift.
Okay.
But agriculture can't be shifted like that. It's not like a factory production. So that's where the Sri Lankan crisis emerged. It's not because of the method. It's not because of the failure of natural farming, as some people put it. It is because the government has thought it can shift it overnight. So today, from that lesson, what we can understand in India also, because we have similar conditions, we have to shift gradually, and the shift has to be where Indian farmers are in sync with that transition, and they will be in the sync with that, because now they understand chemical fertilizers will come from the Qatar or for Gulf countries, and the war is preventing us from getting it. So we will be self dependent if we shift transition. So ये जो मानसिकता जो है, that psychology or the level of understanding, that should be used by the government and by incentivizing, and it can incentivize. Today, instead of increasing our bill by buying from distant Russia, the same amount can be shifted to these 4 or 5 options. And if you incentivize the farmers through MSP or market procurement, farmers will find their own resources to improve their soil health.
Okay.
So this is the kind of transition which we require, and this is an opportunity.
In real time, how soon can the National Organic Compost Mission that you suggested can be implemented?
It can begin now, because we have the basic steps already done.
Okay.
Government of India for the past 5-6 years saying urban waste has to be composted. Some guidelines are there. The thing is, government needs to incentive, give funds for that, and it can happen by all the municipalities immediately. So you have multiple levels of work going on composting. And compost, you can get it easily. I'll give you an example of Hyderabad. Hyderabad every day produces 9,000 tons of urban waste, and in it 40% is wet waste. So, on a single day, if you can take 4,000 tons and compost it, within 1 month you have maybe some 1,000 tons of compost, organic fertilizer. So, this can happen across India. So, you have something to depend on immediately for the next June, July, we can use that. And second is, when you encourage farmers to cultivate legumes or crops, the knowledge is with them. We have seeds also. The only thing government has to do is incentivize, and farmers will find their own resources to go for nitrogen fixing crops. This is again, it does not mean hardly, out of 1,74,000 crores, you just give 20,000 crores. So, the same amount probably we are now trying to get from fertilizer from Russia or China, or doing a lot of diplomacy to get more tankers.
So it can be done in a mission mode if
Exactly, it's a mission mode, and it will be win-win. It will be sustainable, and we don't require additional resources. It's only shifting from one to the other.
Right. I think you've given us a fine blueprint of what can be done right now to get out of this crisis. Dr. Donthi, thank you so much. This really gets to the heart of it, that it is not a fertilizer supply or availability problem. It's or not a supply chain problem. It's a soil problem. It's a crop choice problem, as you explained, and it's a subsidy problem as well for the government. So ultimately, it's a question of where we want to see our agriculture going in the future. And none of it is easy, I'm sure, but we have to start somewhere, as you explained very well. So thank you so much for sharing your insights with us and for joining us here at Beyond the Plate. And thank you to all of you for listening. Thank you for watching this podcast. If you want to watch more such content, please subscribe to Down to Earth's YouTube channel.